I've been kind of facing a dilemma for the last few days, really, about how to start off this particular message, because there's a part of me that wants to start it off by saying life is hard. But the thing about that is that's so cliched that if I said that, there's a good chance you're tuning me out before I get to the next sentence. All of us knows that, unfortunately, life has a lot of difficulties that come along with it, and that just the act of being born is enough to guarantee that you're going to face hardship. But one of the beautiful things of life and one of the beautiful things about our God is that every so often we get moments where just things seem to come together. Moments where our hard work or our dedication or our commitment or just even our life itself is celebrated, where people bring recognition to all the things that we've accomplished, or we get kind of our moment in the sun, if you will. And as awesome as those moments are for us, and they are awesome, they're maybe just a little bit sweeter for those who are around us. Our support teams, our people who have been cheering us on along the way. I haven't even gotten to the story yet, Mandy, and I'm going to get emotional. So it's going to be a fun morning, everybody. When Mandy graduated high school, she didn't really know what the direction was for her. She didn't really know what she wanted to do when she grew up. And she went to college because that was kind of expected of her, right? I mean, that was the mantra that we were told all through middle school on into high school, that you got to go to college, you got to go to college, you got to go to college. Didn't matter if you knew what you were doing or not. And Mandy found herself at Kentucky Christian University in Grayson, Kentucky, which, other than the school itself, if you've ever been to Grayson, Kentucky, there's not much there. But she was majoring in music. She kind of thought maybe music is what I want to do. She'd always had a beautiful singing voice, and she wanted to kind of explore more of what it meant to study music. But after a semester at KCU, she kind of felt like, music itself is not really what I want to focus on. And so she changed her major, and she changed it to music business. She thought maybe I needed to go into the business side of music. Maybe that was more her speed. But after a full year of college, Mandy not only felt that music business was not what she wanted to do with her life or was the direction that she needed to go, but also KCU itself, while it is a great school, it wasn't the school for her. And so she transferred to Ball State University in Muncie, Indiana, that she still to this day refers to as the pit of despair. I don't know why, Muncie's a town, but it's not a terrible town. And she changed her major again, this time to psychology. And she spent a year at Ball State, and the Ball State experience was fine and everything like that, but it just still wasn't clicking for her. And so she decided, instead of going to another university, she was going to transfer to a community college and kind of get things a little cheaper for her. And she was even going to go part-time because she still wasn't really sure of the direction her life needed to go. And so she switched to Ivy Tech Community College, her major again, this time to interior design. And she was there for a while and kind of enjoying her classes, but still not in love with it. And then one summer, she happened to meet a dork who had aspirations of being a youth pastor, and she thought that dork was kind of cute, so she stuck around for a while. But eventually, Ivy Tech itself, they dissolved the interior design program, and for some reason, they stuck her in construction engineering. And the idea of Mandy in a hard hat and a tool belt, it just doesn't seem to line up. But I'd like to see that sometime. I think that might be kind of fun for me. So finally, after 3 different schools, after 5 different majors, and after 4 years and several thousand student loans, Mandy decided that she just didn't really know what was next. She didn't know the direction that she wanted to go, and she was frustrated, and she just didn't want to waste any more money. And so she made the difficult decision of dropping out of college entirely, with the intention of I'm going to work in the field for a while, and I'm going to figure out what it is that I want to do. Well, things with that dork youth pastor guy kind of got serious, and pretty soon wedding bells were in the air. But along the way, Mandy worked a lot of different jobs. She worked at Menards for a while, which kind of made sense with the construction engineering, I suppose. The county clerk's office in her hometown. And then after we got married, she worked as an activities director for an assisted living facility in our area. And Then she eventually found herself working at a local coffee shop that for some reason was in a library. I don't know why it was in the library to begin with. I guess so. But she liked that job, I guess. But it was while she was working at that coffee shop that we discovered that we were pregnant, and because we were pregnant, I couldn't go meet John Montana as much as I wanted to. Everybody likes a callback joke, right? But while she was pregnant, the coffee shop itself went under. And Mandy found herself, really for the first time in her life, unemployed. And she did several interviews with several different places, but once they found out that she was pregnant, all of a sudden there was a reason why they couldn't hire her. And so it just kind of made things a little difficult for her. She, again, felt kind of directionless in her life. And I did everything I could as her husband to reassure her that everything's going to be okay. We're going to figure this thing out. And in fact, I encouraged her, while you're in this time where you don't have a job and everything, why don't you try to revisit that whole what do I want to do when I grow up thing? Just kind of maybe use this as an opportunity to really think about and pray about and focus on what direction should I go. And it was when she was about 7 months pregnant with twins that one day she just kind of chimed up out of nowhere. Like she turned while we were watching television with each other and she said, I think I want to be a dental assistant. Now here's the thing about dental assisting. It's a great job for one thing, but it does involve being around things like radiation and occasionally chemicals that can be harmful if they're not used properly. And so I thought that while this was a great idea and this would be a great job for her, and I was totally on board and supportive of it, 7 months pregnant with twins didn't really seem like it was the best time to pursue this. I mean, for one thing, it was difficult for her to get around unless pickles were in. So I said, let's kind of put things on hold and kind of also on the other side of that coin, things for me in the church that I was working for at the time were kind of rocky, but I'm sure we'll talk more about that later. But because of circumstances beyond both of our control, it would actually be about 2 years before we were in a position where we could actually send Mandy to start these classes. And in that 2 years, it was kind of interesting because it changed her mind. There was never a moment where she wavered in this decision of, I think dental assisting is the direction I need to go. Something about it just aligned and clicked up for her. And so when she started those classes after 2 years, she started them like a house on fire. Mandy was never a bad student, but she was never the all A's kind of student. And yet in that class, she aced everything. She was reading her textbook every night like it was a work of great literature of some kind, quizzing herself on the different numbers of teeth. I never knew that teeth had numbers to them, but she was doing everything she could. I think by the time the class was over, she had that textbook practically memorized to the point that even to today, when her coworkers have questions, they don't open a book, they go ask Mandy because Mandy's the encyclopedia. I did everything I could as her husband to try to be supportive, not just in encouraging her and cheering her on, but I let her take x-rays of my teeth while she was still a student. I let her, have her of me. I was her guinea pig. And there were some places where I had notes. But overall, it was so much fun for me to see as this new side completely awoken within my wife, this new passion and this new desire. The night of her graduation was actually our anniversary. And I thought that was kind of cool. And as great as it was to be in that place and have both of our daughters sitting on my lap watching as their mom is just being celebrated by all of her teachers and her classmates, as she was graduating at the tippy top of her class, and over again, people are telling her what a great job she was doing and what a great dental assistant she's going to make. As proud as Mandy was in that moment, I was far and away prouder. Because I knew the struggle that she had endured. I knew the years of uncertainty and rudderless movement that she had. I knew how frustrated she had been and how discouraged she had been and how much self-doubt she had walked through. And so to watch her have her moment was maybe one of the best moments of my life. And it wasn't my moment. I continue to be proud of my wife, but that night, that moment, that was something special. It's always cool to have those moments in your life, but But it's even more fun. It's even more to those who have cheered you along, who have been there beside you, who have encouraged you when you've wanted to give up. In my career, in my lifetime, I have been to a metric ton of high school graduations, and I've learned that as cool as it is to watch those kids have those moments as their name is called and they get to walk across the stage and shake the hand and grab the diploma that they worked hours and hours towards, it's actually more fun to watch the family, to see the joy and the pride and just the excitement that they share in that moment because they know what that kid has gone through. Those moments where we get to see as those that we care about, those that we spend our time with, get to have their moment in the sun, it's exciting because we've been alongside of them every step of the way. And as we get to our text today, Peter has been alongside Jesus every step of the way. He has seen everything that Jesus has done. We're going to find ourselves in Luke chapter 19. We're going to be in verses 28 through 40 today, so please go ahead and turn there in your Bibles. But as you do, I want to pause for a second because I think there's something that we need to kind of address here. Because this particular text is actually going to be different from every other text that we have used and are going to use in our series in talking about Peter. And what makes it different is that because all these other texts are focused around Peter, but in this particular text, Peter himself is not directly mentioned. We're including Peter in part of this narrative and still focusing on him through this, and we'll get to that in just a second. But as we get to this text, Peter has been following Jesus for 3 years, and he's been there for everything. And so as this moment is so huge for Jesus, as this moment is such an important milestone moment in the ministry of Jesus, then we can say very confidently, Peter was there, man. He wasn't going to miss this. He'd been there for everything. Every big healing, every big sermon that Jesus ever gave, every dust-up that he had with the Pharisees, every, this is a weird word to say out loud, resurrection that Jesus was involved with. Peter had seen it. Every story that we know about the ministry of Jesus that we see in the Gospels, Peter was right there for it. But Peter was also there. And he was also there for the moments that we don't know about. He was there for all those around a campfire as they just talked about life. Peter was there for those moments. He heard the jokes that Jesus would give that were so hilarious that they thought their sides were never going to stop hurting. They were laughing so hard. I mean, right? Jesus was involved in the creation of the duck-billed platypus. We can all agree. He's got a sense of humor, right? He was there for those somber moments. Jesus finds out that his friend, his cousin, the guy who had been his biggest supporter up to that point when John the Baptist was killed. Peter knows Jesus better than almost anybody else. He experienced moments with Jesus that nobody else outside of 11 other guys know about. He had been there for all of it. And Peter had experienced a moment that only 2 others got to experience too, that we talked about last week, where he heard the voice of God himself say, "This is my son." So Peter knows Jesus better than absolutely everybody there. And he knows that this journey that they're making into Jerusalem to celebrate the Passover, he knows that this is important to Jesus. Jesus has had a weight behind this particular journey that Peter's never really known before. He doesn't exactly know why this journey into Jerusalem is so important. He thinks he's going to find out. As they're making their way into Jerusalem, as they're just outside of it, outside these 2 little villages known as Bethphage and Bethany, as they're coming to the Mount of Olives, which itself is only about 3/4 of a mile away from the gates of Jerusalem, Jesus does something strange. He stops. They're only 3/4 of a mile away. This trip has been so important. Jesus has talked about it a ton leading up to it. Why are we stopping? Well, Jesus needs something. And what he needs is a little strange. In the second part of verse 29, all into verse 31, it says this. It says, he sent 2 of the disciples saying, "Go into the village in front of you. where on entering you will find a colt tied, on which no one has ever yet sat. Untie it. If anyone asks you, why are you untying it? You shall say this, the Lord has need of it. A couple quick, super quick things here. First off, when we read the word colt, oftentimes we tend to think of a young horse, right? Or we think about guys in blue who play football, right? No? Okay, cool. It's just the Indiana boy. Got it. But in Matthew, the same event, he points to the idea that the colt in question here is actually a young donkey. It says in Matthew chapter 21, verse 2, you will find a donkey tied and a colt with her. The implication here is that the colt in question is the offspring of said donkey. This is the child of that donkey that's tied up there. The second thing that I want to point out here is that Luke does not name the two disciples that Jesus sends on ahead, but there are a lot of biblical scholars who actually believe that the two disciples that he sends are John and our good buddy Peter. And the reason they think it's these particular two is because just a little bit later on in Luke 22 verse 8 it says, so Jesus sent Peter and John saying, go and prepare the Passover for us that we may eat it. The indication being that Peter and John are the two disciples that Jesus knows he can trust to get things done. Scholars believe that even though Peter is not directly mentioned here, that it's actually Peter is one of the disciples going to get that donkey. And it's why I felt comfortable that even though the series is supposed to be focused on Peter, to still go ahead and include this text. And so Peter is sent by Jesus. And you got to think that as he's going into town and as he's looking for this donkey, he's got to be thinking, why are we doing a donkey? Why is a donkey involved in this? We're only about 15 to 20 minutes away from Jerusalem itself. Why are we stopping to get a donkey? Jesus, he doesn't usually ride animals. Right? Usually Jesus walks everywhere that he goes. So far, we've seen Jesus put mile after mile on the shoes that he's wearing. And yet all of a sudden, it's important that Jesus stop this progression on into Jerusalem, this trip that he has been talking about for weeks now, to get a donkey of all things. And as soon as Peter gets into that village and he sees the donkey tied up, he's not surprised, right? Because he goes ahead and he goes and gets the donkey, knowing that, whatever it is, Jesus is going to make it make sense. I just might as well do what Jesus says. It's a lesson that, frankly, I wish I could say that I've mastered. But why a donkey? He never can quite get an answer for it. He brings the donkey back and he's confused about this whole thing, but he watches as Jesus gets onto the donkey itself, and they resume that journey into Jerusalem. It makes sense, but maybe just Jesus' feet got really tired, and so all of a sudden we need a donkey involved here. But it's as they're making their way into Jerusalem that some of the people who've been following around them for a while do something unique. See, Jesus has been making his way to Jerusalem, but on his way, he does the stuff that we normally see Jesus do, right? He goes, he preaches, he heals, he does all the Jesus-y things that we're accustomed to. And as he continues to make this journey, so far every town that they've gone in, some people have decided they're coming with them. And so they've amassed quite a large crowd of people, but as they're getting closer and closer to Jerusalem, as Jesus is riding this donkey, some of the people involved in this, they start taking off their outer garment. And it actually tells us in verse 36, it says, as he rode along, they spread their cloaks on the road. I've read this narrative several times. And usually when I got to verse 36 and I heard they took their cloaks off and they put it on the road, I thought, well, that's weird. And then I moved on. Right? Here they are, they're creating kind of a little pathway for Jesus on top of this donkey that we don't know why the donkey's there either. But now they're spreading their cloaks out. Why are they doing something like that? But here's the thing. The reality is that this harkens back to a significant moment in the history of Israel, specifically in Jerusalem's history. In 2 Kings chapter 9, after the death of the evil King Ahab, the guy who was the villain of the entirety of Elijah's story, Jehu is anointed by the prophet of God, and he is very quickly elevated as the king of Israel. But as he's being anointed by God, he is given an edict by God to go into Jerusalem and wipe out Ahab's entire family. Now, we could look at that and go, that's kind of harsh, right? But here's the thing. Ahab and his wife Jezebel have ushered in idol worship at a level that has never been experienced in Israel's history. And God is not happy about that. And so he is anointing Jehu as king, elevating him to this status and giving him the edict to go and take care of this situation, to set everything right, to lead the people back to God. In fact, his ascension into kingdom was done so quickly, they did not have the time to plan the elaborate entrance of a new king that usually would be expected. And so we read in 2 Kings chapter 2, chapter 9, verse 13, as Jehu is on his way into Jerusalem to do the will of God, it says, "Then in haste, every man of them took off his garment and put it under him on the bare steps. And they blew the trumpet and proclaimed, 'Jehu is king.'" A man being anointed by God is going to go and set everything in Jerusalem right. I sincerely doubt that Peter was thinking of Jehu in this moment, but I thought this was cool and that you needed to know it. So there you go. But it isn't just that these people are laying out their cloaks for Jesus. In fact, some of them are doing something that as weird as laying down your cloaks are, they're doing something maybe a little weirder. They're climbing some of the palm trees that are around them. Right? To us, right? When we go to the beach, we look forward to seeing the palm trees. In this part of the world, palm trees are everywhere. It's the same thing as us seeing an oak tree. It's nice, but we see it all the time. And so they're climbing these trees and they're pulling off the palm leaves off of them and they're waving them around. And they're all singing and they're rejoicing and they're praising God. We read in verse 37 to 38, Drawing near, already on the way down the Mount of Olives, the whole multitude of his disciples began to rejoice and praise God with a loud voice for all the mighty works they had seen, saying, "Blessed is the King who comes in the name of the Lord, peace in heaven and glory in the highest." As Jesus is entering the city of Jerusalem, the city, the one where so much of the history of Israel has been the city where David himself reigned, the city where Solomon built the temple of God, the city where so much of this entirety of this nation's proud history has taken place. As Jesus is entering in it, these people are waving their palms, they are laying out their cloaks, and they are singing the praises of God himself, all because of Jesus. Thousands of people are welcoming in Jesus as the conquering hero that he is meant to be. This is Jesus' moment. And I can't help but find myself wondering, what does Peter think of all of this? Peter's been right there beside Jesus for this entire journey. He knows that this is such a significant moment for his friend, for his teacher, for his master. He knows that this is an incredible moment. Peter's maybe starting to think that these folks are starting to suspect what he himself proclaimed out loud, that this is the Messiah. And he's getting to watch as this person that he believes to be the chosen one of God himself, his moment. All of the hardship that they've endured, all of the rejection that they have faced in various towns, all of the times the Pharisees have tried to make things difficult. And if you read verses 39 and 40, then you know they're still trying to make it difficult for him. They're trying to rain on the parade, literally. It's all been worth it. Because this is the moment where everybody else is starting to see what I already know. And that's how important this guy is. He deserves all of this. This moment is incredible for Peter because it is incredible for Jesus. And yet something is off about it to Peter. Because here they are they're getting this tremendous welcome from the people, with thousands shouting in praise and waving. Well, they're waving palm leaves. They're waving things that they're laying out the cloaks that they wore for him to walk on. And he's riding a donkey. As cool as this moment is, shouldn't the Son of God have a little bit more fanfare? I mean, if this was Rome, this would be entirely different. This wouldn't look anything like this. See, in first century Rome, whenever a hero of the army or a conquering general would make his way back to Rome, they would celebrate him by having a very elaborate parade. No hero of Rome is walking in on the cloaks of the people that happen to be there. He's walking in on ornate flooring, sometimes even rugs themselves, which were pretty rare in that time, but still existed. The people aren't going to be waving standard everyday palm leaves. They're throwing beautiful flowers at him as a show of their respect and the honor that he deserves. And for crying out loud, he's not coming in on a donkey. He's getting drawn in by an ornate horse bespeckled with all sorts of other stuff, with gold finishings on him, the most powerful thing that they could find, because this is what a hero deserves. And so why is the Son of God on a stinking donkey? Well, when you think about it for a moment, what else was he going to do? Think about this. What is the purpose of a donkey? See, for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, donkeys have been primarily used for one thing: labor. The donkey is the symbol of a blue-collar worker, right? This is a very agriculturally based culture. So that every farm around would have at least one donkey. And that donkey would have very specific roles. If it was harvest time, they would gather up all the wheat or the barley or whatever else that they had grown. They would put it into a cart, and they would have that cart towed by a donkey to bring it into the marketplace so that they could sell. When it was time for planting, they would get the bags of seed and they would load it into the cart, and they would have it hauled to the fields by a donkey. Sure, occasionally people would use it to ride on, but primarily it was used for work. It was used for labor. Again, they're fine to ride on, but they're common. They're ordinary. So often in our world today, we tend to look at modes of transportation as really a symbol of our status. The wealthier that somebody is, the more power that they wield, oftentimes the more expensive, the more elaborate their rides are. If somebody comes into money very suddenly, nearly always the first thing they purchase is a new car. To see the Son of God riding into town on a donkey would be about the equivalent of seeing a ruler, a leader, even a president coming into town in a 1998 Honda Civic. You could, sure, but it doesn't really show your status. By Jesus riding in on a donkey, what he is showcasing to everybody is that he's not interested in being the Messiah of just the high and the mighty and the powerful and the politically influenced. He's interested in being the Messiah of all. By choosing to ride in on the common donkey, a symbol of blue-collar work, he's showcasing that I'm here for you. Not just for the kings, not just for the princes, not just for the whatever else. I'm here for you. Because the Messiah is meant for all. So often we as Christians, we kind of misguide ourselves, get it in our heads in some way, shape, or form that Jesus is just for me. Right? We probably don't say that out loud. We don't vocalize that. But we certainly treat him that way. We try to contain Jesus just into our ideology. We like to say that if Jesus was around today, then he would definitely be a part of my chosen political party. Truth is that Jesus is for all. He's for everyone. For those who come into the halls that proclaim his name week in and week out, and also for those who don't. For those who are willing to acknowledge that Jesus Christ is King, and for those who are willing to say, I don't believe there is a God. Jesus is the Messiah for all. Next week, there are going to be a great many people walking into the halls of churches all around the world, many of whom haven't been in a church since Christmas. Some of them for much longer than that. And for some more, maybe for the first time ever. And I've heard, and you've heard too, if we're willing to be totally honest, I've said, and I'm guessing some of you in here have too, things like, well, see you next year. Maybe we'll see you at Christmas. And I don't know that we necessarily mean anything malicious by that, but I've often found myself thinking about if I'm the one who's hearing that, what am I thinking? And I think for those who hear that, there's a little bit of pain involved in that. Because it's almost like we're saying, he's my Jesus, not yours. But Jesus came in on a donkey to show that he is for all. As we hopefully get a bunch of people in here who aren't normally here, maybe instead of cracking jokes, we should go out of our way to make them feel welcomed. If you come in here and you see somebody who you don't recognize and they're sitting in your usual chosen preferred spot, can I tell you the Holy Spirit is bigger than just 3 rows up and 5 seats over? Instead of getting upset, maybe go shake their hand. Say, hey, welcome. I'm glad you're here today, and get a new perspective. Maybe if we do everything that we can to show them the love of the Jesus who comes into town riding on a donkey to show that he is for all so that he can go and he can die on a cross for all, just maybe they might want to come back the next week. They might want to learn more. They might want to know what it takes to follow this Jesus. Because the reality is the donkey was the perfect animal to choose. Because this Jesus coming into town, having his moment atop a common, ordinary donkey, is doing so to showcase that he is for all. The other side of it is that it really shouldn't have surprised anybody that Jesus chose to ride in on a donkey, because it was actually prophesied nearly 100 years before he actually did so. We read in Zechariah chapter 9, verse 9, and we're going to close with it this morning. Rejoice greatly, O daughter of Zion. Shout aloud, O daughter of Jerusalem. Behold, your king is coming to you. Righteous and having salvation is he. Humble and mounted on a donkey, on a colt, the foal of a donkey.